We're starting tonight in Yamhill County, just outside of Newburgh, because we have a fascinating story for you. It has two parts. Part one involves the state of Oregon and the Department of Ag, which is possibly creating rules which this dairy farmer, small dairy, says could put them out of business. And then the second part involves social media and a post on YouTube with more than 2 million views, which has, shall we say, misconstrued some of the facts about those potential new rules. And it's also made this small dairy farmer the face of a political campaign that she does not agree with. This is Sarah King, owner of Godspeed Hollow, a dairy with a total of 3 cows. Well, now it's 4.
So we have Raya. Miss Raya delivered a beautiful baby heifer for us this morning. Well, I think it was this morning. I didn't get to see it. So, you know, they don't like to make a scene out of it, luckily. But
Sarah's pasture covers 11 acres. Her cows mostly roam around outside and poop and pee on the ground. It becomes fertilizer for the soil. Her dairy is a small business. She sells raw milk directly to members who pay to own a share of her herd and are thus entitled to some of the milk. It's a workaround to bypass Oregon law, which prohibits selling raw milk at retail markets. For years, tiny dairies like Sarah's were also pretty much ignored when it came to rules about handling the waste that falls from their animals. State regulators instead focus on bigger operations, some with 1,000 cows or more. But that changed in January of 2023. The Oregon Department of Agriculture issued 2 white papers and declared that even the tiniest dairy operations would have to follow the same rules as the giant companies. The change shocked Sarah and many others. She would have to pay for permits to install drain lines and holding tanks and frequent journaling to show how she's handling the animal waste. Do you know what it would cost if you had to follow all their requirements?
Yeah, so it's a really huge range. It could have been anywhere between $15,000 all the way easily up to $100,000 or more, depending on the level of infrastructure that they're going to require from us. Wow. Okay. So it's not an insignificant, I mean, and I don't care who you are, $15,000 is a lot of money anyway. Yeah. And if I think about even a small household that's not selling any raw milk, they're just milking their backyard goat for their own family, that's a really unreasonable ask for them.
Why was the change made? Well, one hint is right here on the front page of the state's white paper. It notes, the Department of Agriculture has received concerns from the Oregon dairy industry that many raw milk or herd share dairies are operating in Oregon without CAFO permit registrations. Unpermitted raw milk and herd share dairies enjoy an unfair competitive advantage of not having a CAFO permit by failing to pay permit fees and not bearing the cost of environmental protection contained in the permits. So basically, commercial dairies in Oregon felt the small raw milk dairies had an unfair advantage, and they convinced the Oregon Department of Agriculture to do something about it. A second white paper from the state hammered home the change. Most raw milk dairies in Oregon must be registered to a confined animal feeding operation permit, as required by federal and state law. What was your reaction when you first learned this was going on?
My first reaction was, I don't understand how anybody in the state is going to be able to enjoy a backyard cow or goat or sheep anymore if they're going to ask us to go through a whole lot of hoops and pay a ton of fees in order to just have a small farm like what we have. It makes it untenable, not just from a business perspective, but from just a total property ownership perspective.
Sarah turned to the Institute for Justice, a national civil rights law firm with offices in 6 states, including Washington state. She and 3 small dairies sued the state of Oregon in federal court to block that new rule. Bobby Taylor is one of the lawyers handling Sarah's case.
Our lawsuit brings claims under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, basically saying that this violates due process and equal protection because it's arbitrary and irrational to treat these dairies as though they're operations with thousands or hundreds of cows that produce that kind of waste.
After the Institute filed its lawsuit, the Oregon Department of Agriculture had second thoughts about its plan. On March 21st, it reversed course, announcing in this release that it will not take enforcement action and that the act of milking an animal in a barn or cleaning the milking equipment did not trigger a CAFO requirement. Are you relieved at all now that the state has pulled that reg back, at least temporarily?
Yeah, it's a great first start. And I think that one of those next steps really becomes more conversation with those who can help structure and shape future policies so that we get clear about what is appropriate for small farms and what is not.
So you might be thinking that's the end of Sarah's problems, right? Wrong.
It seems like these types of stories are starting to become so prolific you could almost do a video a day on this stuff.
This brings us to the second part of our story. 3 days before the state abandoned its new policy on the small dairies, this YouTuber picked up the story and ran with it.
But today I wanted to talk about the state of Oregon.
His name is Charlie Rankin. According to his LinkedIn profile, he lives in a tiny town a couple hours east of Charlotte, North Carolina. His profile says he's involved in agriculture, broadcast media, and production. And he has a YouTube channel called Yanasa TV. It's very much pro-farmer and full of worry. One of his playlists has titles including A Disaster is Coming and The World Has Lost Its Senses and Denver Legislation Intends to Bankrupt Farmers en masse. And the title of this video is Oregon Urgently Shuts Down Small Farms en masse to Protect the People. It certainly gained a lot of attention. I first heard about it from viewers in early April, asking if it was true. Back then, the video had 2 million views. Now, it's more like 3 million, with more than 29,000 comments. And our small dairy operator, Sarah King, well, she plays a starring role in that YouTube video.
Okay, so here's an example for you. Sarah King, who owns Godspeed Hollow Farm in Newberg, Oregon, has a pickup station that's just 100 feet in length. She has an 11-acre property and keeps things pretty simple. She has 3 milking cows. She's been shut down for being called a CAFO.
That's not true. She has not been shut down. I told Sarah I've been getting emails from viewers worried about her.
Yeah, trust me, I've had a few emails myself.
Yeah.
Yes.
It makes it look pretty dire.
It does make it look dire. I don't know who the person is that produced the video and published it. They have quite the following. There was a couple of things that were not quite as accurate for our story as were portrayed, but that's okay. So I think one of the most important parts is that we were not shut down. We did not receive a cease and desist letter by the state, so I want to assuage that.
Nobody's trying to take your farm.
Nobody's trying to take my farm. So that was not accurately portrayed. But
there is an issue.
There is an issue.
Yeah.
There's definitely an issue.
Which is why she's suing the state, and the lawsuit is continuing to get the state to permanently drop its push to impose those environmental rules on her tiny dairy. I contacted the YouTuber. He insisted his facts are correct and ignored my question about taking down the video.
And it's been, decades in the making.
Steve Smith is a political science professor at Arizona State University. He's studied the way that various political groups cherry-pick information to push their narrative. He's talking in general here and says it's common to find videos that use selective facts to fit the stories they want to tell.
There's just an extremely powerful incentive to keep feeding that audience. And regular news probably doesn't produce enough content. So one way to do this, and of course one way to keep people coming back, is to play on their emotions, to play especially on their fears. And one way to play on their fears is to twist every bit of news so that there is something scary about the future that is generated by your interpretation of those events. So cherry picking a few facts that give it some credibility, quoting a government document or showing a government document or showing a snippet of someone's comment, borrowing from other videos are all ways of getting a few things that technically are facts, but then the real action is stitching together a more complete story that fabricates the larger picture, generates a conspiracy, even generates lies about what in fact is happening.
The video featuring Sarah's dairy appears to be fueling fear and an outrage among many across the country who, according to their comments, believe the government is trying to control the population by shutting down farms. The video also merges two separate issues. Later, the YouTuber discusses the Department of Agriculture sending letters to water users saying they could not irrigate their gardens without purchasing water rights. That issue is totally separate from Sarah and the raw dairy issue. But in the YouTuber's mind, it apparently is all part of the attack on farmers by the government of Oregon. I told Professor Smith that for a time, Sarah was inundated with messages of concern from people who saw her in the North Carolina video.
Well, and her response is one by one. You know, how many people can she possibly talk to as an individual? Well, maybe dozens, but that's it. But tens of dozens of thousands have actually seen a video like that. So how many have not contacted her, but whose behavior has or their thoughts about Oregon policy have been altered by virtue of that kind of an ad? And since this is such a massive enterprise and it occurs on such a wide scale, its cumulative effect, even though each individual video that's misleading has a minuscule effect, the cumulative effect of this is that, you know, large fractions of the American public can be misled about what government is doing. This is really undermining the legitimacy of traditional American political institutions in a very basic way.
I wanted to interview the YouTuber on camera talking about his video, and twice offered to do a Zoom interview with him. But each time he avoided the offer and insisted various parts of his video are accurate. Back at her farm, Sarah can do little about that video, but she wants you to know she is okay and that you should not believe something just because you see it on a social media platform.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that video has gotten a lot of traction.
A couple million views, I think.
A couple million views from what I heard.
Do you worry misinformation is in there?
I do worry that misinformation is in there, and I really would say, you know, keep track of what's happening both from the Oregon Department of Ag site, because they, of course, are publishing what's happening from the department side. And then you can also visit the Institute of Justice site and look at what's happening from the case update.
So there you go. Thanks for all your emails of concern about Sarah, but now hopefully you see there is a lot more to her story. And don't just take my word for it, by the way. After the YouTuber posted his video, the Oregon Farm Bureau felt compelled to issue a statement about it. First, they noted that they consider all agriculture in Oregon to be overregulated by the government. But they also added to suggest that the state of Oregon is targeting small or backyard farms is a stretch. So please don't believe everything you see on social media. Just remember Sarah's story if you're wondering if what you're reading is too good to be true or too awful to be true. You know, odds are might be. Check with local media to see. Now, I know that's a lot to take in, but now we want to hear from you. What do you think about all this? The YouTuber or Sarah and her farm or the state and its regulations, whatever. Whatever you want to talk to us about, we'd love to hear it. Send us an email, will you? Our address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you.